Mr. Dejoux, you have criticized Congress for borrowing from Social Security, and you oppose any reduction in entitlements like Medicare. At the same time, you oppose restoring higher taxes for people with higher incomes. Can you really have it both ways?
Kiyuki, the issue in the United States Congress isn't whether or not Congress is capable of taking money from the American people. The problem we have in Congress today is Congress spending too much of the people's money. I go back to, again, the biggest issue we have facing our country today is the economy. And for all of us here in Hawaii, we need to work much harder at turning around this economy. The last thing that's needed in this economy today is the government going out and sucking more money out of the private sector. What we need to be doing is encouraging more risk takers, more entrepreneurs, and more investors. And the way we do that is maintaining a low, stable tax rate. Increasing taxes of any form right now is simply not a good idea. Now, over the long term, I do believe that we must tackle the budget deficit. And that's why I've supported three things. Number one, returning all unspent stimulus money to deficit reduction. Second, returning all TARP money, that's the Troubled Asset Relief Program funds, back to deficit reduction. And third, because the federal government has expanded by a greater margin than any other time since the Franklin Roosevelt administration, I believe we need to reduce the size of the federal workforce back to 2008 levels. And the way we can do that is for every 2 employees who leave the federal workforce, the federal government should only hire 1 back. This is the way to bring us to fiscal responsible government, and certainly is a big change of what Congress has been doing thus far.
Thank you, Mr. Dejoux. Rebuttal from Ms. Hanabusa.
Yes, you know, it's very interesting because the question was, how can you have it both ways? And I think that is exactly the issue here. When you talk about the Bush tax cuts, we're talking about, in particular, if you're going to have to restore it, you're going to have to pass specific legislation to let it continue. Because by its own language, that statute has to sunset because it wouldn't pencil out otherwise. Now, we're talking about the high income, that's the top 2% of this nation. You know, you hear that somehow giving them the money, they will stimulate the economy, but I ask one simple question. This Bush tax cut's been in effect for 10 years. We have the worst deficit in the United States in that 10 years. So what did they do with the savings that they had for the 10 years that you believe will continue? That's not the answer. To balance it, to make sure that we can keep entitlements, you must cut those. You must restore those taxes to the Clinton area.